64 million SPM science per minute, 228,000 ppm packs per minute. Just to put that into perspective, that is 64 belts worth of each of the sciences, 16 belts if stacked. Apply the research productivity modules and science pack drain and you got 4 million SPM. Now just to put that into perspective, a good middle base in base Factorio is 10,000 packs per minute. I am doing almost 4,000 per second. The SPM isn't even comparable. That is pretty much everything you need to get hooked on. I have been playing in this world since I started playing Space Age. You can watch these 3 previous videos to get the full context, but I will summarize quickly. First, I beat Space Age. I conquered all 4 planets and reached the solar outer edge. Next, I designed all the blueprints for the mega base in common tier quality using the legendary ratios and built them in common quality. This base was terrain centered. Lastly, I built everything necessary to make legendary modules and machines and upgraded my mega base to legendary quality. This, in theory, would have gotten me 60,000 ppm, but my base was so bad that it didn't even work. Basically, belts got 4 times better, pipes got insanely buffed now that have infinite throughput, and trains remained the same. Well, they did get elevated rails and legendary fuel, but that is nothing. Due to power creep, trains are simply not nearly good enough and you should only use them for low throughput items like science and tall sight. So what is my plan? What will I do differently this time to ensure I will succeed, unlike the last couple of times? I am going to use lots of pipes and bolts. In a given science block, it will only take in liquids and raw ores to produce the science. No intermediate products will be shipped or transported. Everything will happen on site. This will minimize the points of failure. I will be transporting the liquids like the bus design, but with the liquids. There's a length limit of course, but a couple of pumps should do the trick. The liquids that will be in the main bus mainly are molten iron, molten copper and petroleum. You can include sulfuric acid and water, but it's much better to just make it on site and route the water directly to the block. As for the raw ores, such as coal and stone, I'm not sure yet. I will either build the science blocks near the ore patch it needs and build it over, or transport it with trains in a way it won't deadload ever. The setup I'm imagining is something like this. You have got continuous lines of pipes running across the mega base. The pipes split whenever necessary to make science. I'm going to make lots of new blueprints, so a new boot is adequate. Since there is a chance that I route the raw ores through belts, it's more advantageous to build a mega base far away for bigger and richer ore patches. The smartest thing to do is move in a line for about 5 hours and set up a base there with everything, including the cargo landing pad. But I'm too lazy for that, so I thought about only building the science setup far away and transporting the science back. Instead of letting trains travel for minutes, I thought about an alternative method. The sciences will be sent up by rockets into space and dropped immediately into a cargo landing pad. This will make the transportation like 30 seconds no matter what. This unfortunately doesn't work as the request itself rejects the unloading of the science. This can be resolved if we can somehow control the request or send it to another planet and load it up on another ship. Plus it brings in more complications of unloading it with more bots and needing to provide rocket parts. And if you're going to have to ship the science, you might as well build them on volcanoes. So I won't be doing that, but I would love to see someone implement this. For the pipe bus, they can be stacked like this. Most notable about this design is that I can add as many more pumps as I can to each of the pipes, which is nice as I need pumps in different amounts and I haven't calculated yet how many pumps I need. Time to build the science blueprints. First off is the red science, made out of iron gears and copper plate. At this point I'm not going for a particular number of science, but rather following the flow of the science. What does that mean though? To fully consume a build of each input, you will need 15 assemblers, but to fully saturate a build with the output, you only need 8. To fully capitalize on this, we can make a rectangle of assemblers with the dimensions of 8 width and 15 length. This allows us to route the input builds vertically and the output builds horizontally, consuming and saturating both the input and the output builds fully. It can't be done any better than this. This rectangle of assemblers makes around 180,000 science per minute, which is pretty okay. What makes red science a complete joke is that both its ingredients can be directly casted from liquid. You will only need it to feed it 2 pipes and it will just work. The foundries making the copper plates makes around 400 plates per second, which is unfortunately just shy of 2 stacked belts, so I will have 3 foundries for 5 belts and 2 foundries for 3 bolts. As for the gears, they can make way more than 2, so this is fine. Then comes the train loading. The trains are as long as how many output belts we have. 15. Instead of using chests as a buffer, I am using a second train as a leftover collector. When train 1 leaves, the science will fill train 2 until train 1 gets replaced. Not perfect, but good enough. I am not sure how many trains buffers I will need, so I will have 4 for each train stations. That's the red science done. Now that I've explained my process, I won't explain it every time. Green science needs inserters, which need green circuits. Green circuits are needed in other circuits which are needed in other sciences. To manually build a green circuit setup every time will be too tedious and a time wastement. So I will design a blueprint I can just slap around anywhere to get 2 builds worth of green circuit. I will do this later with red and blue circuits too. As for the design philosophy of this small blueprint, make it as compact and versatile and easy to use as possible. I had the option of directly casting molten copper to copper wire, but I think casting it to plate then turning it to wire is a lot better. That extra step in the electromagnetic plant, it grants a 175% productivity bonus, which is insane to skip. This is green science done. The input pipes are located right here. Next is blue science. This is much more complicated than the previous 2 sciences. But what I have been basically doing is making the science rectangle, looking at my previous build and kinda just copy pasting it, but of course scaled and belted. This was actually so satisfying to build. I'm so upset I didn't record it. But anyways, I hope you can just see how much more everything is. I'm drowning in these science assemblers. As for how I made the science rectangle, since the inputs aren't consumed at the same rate, I go off the lowest one. The sulfur and the engines will share the belts and will be inserted into the science rectangle from the right side. The red circuits will insert from the left side and the science will go out from the bottom. Belting, balancing and mixing belts with this many belts isn't so fun, let me tell you that. I left a gap between the engines and the science, as I expected to need to route something between the left and the right side. This is the red circuit blueprint, nothing special, although it's bad, because the input can only handle the first 3 electromagnetic plants. You will need to route a vertical belt in the 4th column to get a full red belt. This is it. It looks like a bunny. This is red science in comparison. I built the station and connected the pipes, and that's it. I decided to test it and it's working quite nicely. Only problem is the last 2 or 3 assemblers aren't getting fed. This is really bad, as that practically doubles the time for the train to load the science and thus practically halves the PPM. They are lacking in red circuits. So I fixed that. Now it's fixed. 2 to 3 assemblers don't work, but on the other side. Seems like I didn't calculate well and underestimated the engine demand. Good thing I overbuilt the engines and I can just siphon 2 belts off it. Now all the belts are filling up and it's working as planned. That's 300,000 packs per minute in front of you. Can you even imagine that? I went back and tested the red and green science, just in case. It's actually really easy for me to test them, as I only need to provide them with the liquids. I'm gonna leave military science and purple science as last, because they are the scariest. For yellow science, I need LDS. Since there's an infinite productivity research, I wasn't sure if I should mix in speed and productivity modules for the future. I just went for the safe option of only having 1 speed modules and 3 productivity modules. Some fiddling and we get something like this. FACTORIO really should let you zoom out further than this. This is a blue circuit blueprint, just paste down a red circuit blueprint and connect them. This is what 10 stack belts worth of blue circuits look like with the red circuits on the top. I will place it above the LDS and route it. I actually need 12 belts and instead of just making space for the 2, I placed it on the top. This is already so tall and there's only 2 ingredients. It's so tall that I reached the pipe limit within it. So massive in fact, it will have its own pipe bus. Lastly is the flying engine. Building in this way isn't even hard. The hardest part about this is doing the math and making sure everything is properly routed. I forgot to use legendary cryogenic plants, so it is 3 times bigger as it needed. Not this much though. I was not doing well cognitively when I built this. I will mix the steel with the batteries, drain circuits with the electric engines. The good thing about this kind of design is that it doesn't break if you take in or put in materials, so it's easy to adjust and repair. But I honestly love this, because I'm making everything on site. I can test everything and make sure everything is running well. If I do that correctly, then the only thing that stops me from getting that result in the game is the input. So for as long as I can provide a stable, good input, I can guarantee I will get a good output without it ever failing, simply because it is all built and there's nothing to go wrong. It's really tight. This massive, or should I say mega, facility only has 6 bolts of coal and 4 pipes as an input. I love the color of yellow cyanide. It's the same as a yummy banana. Maybe it's different for you guys because I have my monitor's vibrance all the way up. Would you guys believe me that this isn't even my biggest blueprint? It does produce the most amount of packs. 338,000 per minute. I turn it on and I just go around looking for things going wrong, like a faulty belt or not enough pumps, because clearly something is not right. 70 pumps is barely enough for the chopper alone. This looks so good actually. I'm so excited to butcher it in-game as I won't strain it to the fullest due to the other sciences being too slow. Never mind, I need 150 pumps for the chopper. But I am staying on my peak, so it's a success. That's red, green, blue and yellow science. Military and purple science will be harder to make, as I don't know how I will provide the insane amount of stone and coal. Military science consists of grenades, red ammo and walls. For grenades, 1 bolt of iron is enough for 4 assemblers, but needs 2 bolts of coal. I could have probably routed it better, but it's whatever. It is kind of ridiculous how much assemblers I need for grenades. 22 assemblers just for 1 bolt. Thankfully, I only need half a bolt for each row of the sciences. Still, that's 44 bolts of coal I need to supply to it. Red ammo. I've been really loving the design of which you have the input and output on different axes. It's just really convenient. But for the red ammo, the normal design works better. Having it all in 1 row makes it easier to stack. 2 assemblers already consume a whole bolt of copper, so I have to sprinkle in the foundries in between them. I could have probably gotten away with direct insertion here, but meh. For the yellow ammo, it takes a ridiculous amount of iron plate that direct insertion won't be enough. Each assembler makes 80 per second, so having 3 in a row is enough for a bolt. Add a steel foundry and it's done. I actually only need half of this. I accidentally doubled the ammo and the grenades. This is more like it. Connecting everything and mixing the bolts. Walls next. A single assembler produces so much that inserters can't keep up, so I can only benefit from 4 beacons. I chain 2 together and that's walls done. I made a mess out of the station, but it works. Bricks are so space consuming compared to everything. Before that, I want to test it. Well, everything is working quite well. Only the last column of assemblers don't work. Some of them are producing 24, whilst others 22. It's because the assemblers aren't getting all the supposed amount of beacons. I just need to move them around and it should be fixed. It is now fully working, 224,000 per minute. Just to make sure it fully works, I am balancing 5 bolts into 4. I really should be worried about bricks rather than this minor thing. Alright, this is bricks. I have no idea how to position it, neither do I know where the stone comes from, so I will leave it here like this for me to later place it accordingly. Lastly, purple science. This blueprint will be so mega that it takes up 121 megabytes. The science rectangle has a pretty funny shape. One long belt weaves through all the columns and rows, which carries electric furnace and productivity 1 module. Horizontally, rails are inserted and the science taken out vertically. 2 belts worth of rails, as they need 300 per second. Rails suffer the same issue as walls. 4 beacons are enough for it. For each of the assemblers, they have their own foundry making steel and iron sticks. The stone comes from the bottom, and that's the first ingredient done. I will double it though. Those 3 columns are only good for 40,000 ppm, which is not nearly enough. Actually, I will do a little more than just doubling. It's pretty stupid to have the stone come from the bottom, as that's where the signs goes and the train station will be, so I will invert it back up. I completed the train station, which is as long as the signs itself. Productivity module 1 is pretty easy, as both its ingredients I have a blueprint for. "72 balls of stone is insane. I haven't even gotten to making the bricks for the furnaces, which will need even more stone. Electric furnaces take a wild amount of ingredients, 8 inserters for the input alone. With all of this, I still need to paste down the furnaces for the bricks. Every part of this just takes an insane amount of space. On the bright side, it's not complicated. It's like playing with Lego and connecting the mini factories together. The assemblers need 300 rails per second. I am only extracting 240, so I will make room for the 2 extra inserters and join it in the splitter. Honestly, I don't know why I haven't done this from the start. It is so big. Going from the bricks, to the red circuits, to furnaces, to modules, and the science itself. It takes as much space as 8 red science blueprints. All of this for 250,000 ppm. I cannot decide if this looks good or bad. 1 million rails per minute. I need to get rid of the old base for space, machines, and UPS. I thought about using an older save file before I built everything, but I have changed other things around and I don't want to do them again. So I will endure the pain and clean up my base. I will first remove everything that isn't rails, trains, power, and roboports. Then I manually shoot down all the trains. Removing wagons full of materials with bots or even spidertrons just takes way too long, so this is more efficient. I have around 100,000 legendary productivity modules and I don't need any more, so I don't need to produce as many legendary eggs, so I will remove this. I am traumatized of trains from the last time, so I'm trying to keep the train amount as low as possible on the tracks. I want them to be fast. Higher quality of fuel gives the train higher acceleration and top speed. Not sure I will need it, but it is definitely something to consider. I was hoping nuclear rockets will destroy the items on the belt, but they sadly don't. I guess the rocks are stronger than nuclear rockets. I went into editor mode to see the map better. So hear me out. With infinite mining productivity research and resource drain, what if I can research mining productivity faster than I can consume the ore patch? If that's possible, then I can set up my database right here and last for hundreds or even thousands of hours. I have nothing to back this up yet, but let's say the ore patches do eventually run out. At that point, my mining productivity will be so much higher that I will need to only move once. Another thing I can do is train the ores to the base. If I just have multiple long loops of track, each providing, I don't know, 3 to 5 belts, I can ensure that those trains never deadlock and I can go as far as I can. Those loops will point outwards from the base and will go in a straight line, ensuring they won't collide with another loop. Something like this. It is at this point that I want to start getting Prometheum science. Prometheum science is used in research productivity, which will be useful to research more of everything else. Designing a good Prometheum science is something that is hard and can take up tens of hours. That's why I'm gonna use this ship designed by a stupid fat hobbit. Time to lay in the blueprints. Maximizing the amount of miners, but also making sure every miner has enough ore under it is a tedious task. I have to do this for every ore patch. This and laying all the belts took forever. I am a desperate man, so I will do anything to reach my goal. I need to find a suitable place for military science as well. I have two really nice claw patches that I can use, but the claw input is on the other side. I don't want to rotate it, so I'll make another blueprint that's flipped. Since I know where the ores are coming from, I can lay down the belts right now. Oopsie, I forgot to flip it. Those two ore patches will feed me all the coal I want. For the stone, I will get it from these two tiny ore patches and others down below. It is kind of ridiculous the amount of belts I need, but yeah. There's this empty space I can use for red science, as it isn't dependent on ore, so I can put it anywhere. Now that I've placed purple and military science, the rest of the sciences can be placed anywhere really. The only thing I need to think about is water for sulfur and coal. For the loop, I can actually just make it locally. I quickly built this setup that converts all the heavy oil into loop. For the light oil and petroleum, they just get turned into fuel blocks and recycled into nothing. The recyclers aren't placed right, but I will fix them later. Next, I put down two green blueprints and one red blueprint. I had to change the rails a bit. I also have 5 space science ships right now, which should provide me with 300,000 ppm. With all the ore belts hooked up, I can start the next step, which is laying the pipes. I just need to paste this a couple of times in a row, and for each science setup I will connect the pipes for whichever it needs. As 20 pumps for copper wouldn't be enough. I eventually decided on 120 for iron and copper, 50 for the petroleum and the 4th pipe. Now for the last step, supply the pipes. One belt of calcite can actually run a lot of foundries. The problem is more so supplying the ore. You will need 400 ores for each of the foundries, so good luck belting it this way. For each of the ore patches, I can streak out maybe like 20 or 30 foundries, which is okay. I will also need a station to supply it calcite. I did this for molten copper, molten iron and petroleum. I just did it for the patches that were relatively close. I will add more in the future if necessary. Since I'm going for a much higher ppm on novice, I need to do the same for the other sciences. Thankfully, I don't think I need to change my blueprints for them. I added 3 more blueprints for pink science, which should lead me to 240,000 ppm. Next is Aquilo. My original blueprint isn't suitable for a proper rail system, so I would go to the editor extension and add proper stations. Waiting for things to heat up and build this much outwards will take some time, but time I have. Next up is Volcanus. If you couldn't tell by now, I am stalling building the novice base as much as possible. Imagine it's bad and I have to load up the older save file before I build everything, but in the meantime I worked on other planets such as Aquila and Volgara. Then, when I load up the older save, not only do I need to work on novice, I also have to work on Aquila and Volgara again. For the meantime, just forget I even laid blueprints on novice. For lava science, I need to pretty much rebuild the blueprint. Since I'm going to launch the science by rockets, I can place the blueprints as far as I want, meaning I can find pretty good ore patches and build them directly. I will still need a rail system to deliver the rocket parts. I actually don't need a lot of coal. I think I can get away with an 8-wagon long train. For each of them, I need to place their own molten iron and copper foundries. Not too hard though, as calcite and lava are pretty much everywhere. I also placed 3 of these down. I built them and that's that. I almost ran out of uranium as the uranium patch wasn't connected to the base anymore. I will make a temporary path for it. Back to Prometheum science. I will actually use a slightly different design that Finn Dewey designed. It's basically the same as Stupid Fat Hobbit. For it to work, paste down this blueprint, request an epic barrel in the cargo landing pad on Aquilo. Paste down another blueprint on Novice, request an epic oil barrel, and paste down a generous amount of these spider-edged blueprints. Finally, paste down as many ships as you want. A legendary space platform hub is preferred, as the increased health can save the ship from potential biter outbreak, although if it ever happens, then the ship is dead either way. You will have to kickstart the fusion power and wait a generous amount for you to accumulate fuel. I routed all the pipes and fixed any issues that occurred. I wasn't planning on doing global science, but since Joe Clark asked for justice, it will receive justice. It's totally not because I need to research productivity. I, of course, started with the Rectangle law of science. This is about 85,000 ppm, which is pretty good. Spoilage is the main mechanic of gleba. If something exists for too long, it becomes spoilage. Not only that, the more spoiled the science is, the less value it gives. So we need to make sure we are always producing the freshest of the science. The first thing I do to adapt to this mechanic is place an inserter at the end of a bolt or a machine that takes out the spoilage. I'll tell you more as we go. The biochambers need to be fueled by nutrients. I want to rely as little on bots as I can, so I will build the nutrients through the biochambers instead of using the requester chest. It is also why I'm directly recycling the spoilage and not putting it in a chest. Before going further, I want to understand spoilage better. Spoilage carries over. If you input a 50% spoiled item, you will get a 50% spoiled output. But what if you input 2 items? What if you input 2 items with different amounts? One quick read on the FACTORIO wiki, the spoilage is determined by the average freshness, and if you join 2 stacks together, the spoilage is also the average. I have to add an inserter to each of the machines to take out spoilage. The items within the machine can spoil, and I need to get rid of it. You might think we can just take out the spoilage with the science stack inserters, but what if less than a stack size spoil? Then the stack inserters won't work and the machine doesn't work. Each of the biochambers produce like 180 bioflux. With 4 biochambers, I can balance them into 3 balls, and that's the perfect amount I need. With 2 long inserters, I can take out the spoilage and take in the nutrients. I had to remove 2 beacons to fit in the inserters. I am not accounting for anything spoiling. In fact, I will do my best to keep things flowing. For your micro mash and jelly, make sure you have a proper output for the seed and the inserters are filtered. Eggs take a ton of nutrients. A full stack built pretty much for each biochamber. I need 36 of them. At the end of the bolt, I split it off and route it back in, as we need pentapod eggs to make more of themselves. What I failed to realize is that if I split it at the end of the bolt, I won't get the full build I am supposed to get. I will fix it later. Lastly, nutrients for the pentapod eggs. Funnily enough, I only need 1 beacon for each of them, as I physically can't extract more than 2 builds. Eventually, I end up with something like this. This only needs 400 bioflux per second, but I was supplied with 3 builds, which is 720, because I miscalculated. That's gleba science. I needed legendary biochambers for it, so I had to build this egg recycling setup. I only need 1 to recycle it with nutrients and get a lot more. I still need to supply the biochambers with the raw stuff. From my estimation, I need 34 towers to fill a build, but it is probably smart to underbuild it ever so slightly so that the fruits are as fresh as possible. This is by far the most tedious thing I have done. It's even worse than cleaning up my base. Not only do I need to look for a suitable place, I need to custom place every tower according to how the ground is. I did my best to do as good of a job and squeeze out as much of the land as possible, but damn is it annoying. One trick you can use to save on the expansion soil is after you place down the expensive soil, run around everywhere you covered and try to replace it with the cheaper soil. I start lagging and I'm like, why am I lagging so much? Yes, I do have robots flying over, but there shouldn't be too much. Oh! I did not think of this. My initial reaction was worse than seeing a dead body. The funny thing about this is that the riggers aren't even destroying stuff. There are biochambers in the middle of this that aren't even being damaged. I loaded up the autosave to try to save it, but I couldn't. But this taught me something valuable. Things must flow all the time. Seeds and fruits are infinite. If production stops anywhere, the factory breaks. So it must run all the time. Never should builds back up. Never should be anything stored. Meaning, destroy the bioflux, pentapod eggs and science at the end of the bolt. Another thing I want to add about are the rocket silos. Right now, I just fill them up. If they spoil, I have inserters taking them out. This will result in the first batch sent into a spaceship being slightly spoiled. But that only accounts for the first batch, and after that, I should have a constant demand so that none of them sit there for too long. Although it is pretty easy and smart to have the inserters only pick up when there is demand from space. I have done pretty much everything that I wanted. Time to build the mega base. I have discovered something really bad. One miner can't fill a belt. No matter the speed of it, it will only fill half of the belt. I thought putting it in front of a splitter would give out a full belt, but no. I assumed so because when I played space exploration, this trick did work for core miners. So basically, all the bolts that I've laid are going to give 120 instead of 240, or practically halving the science. I am thinking about putting at least red and green science on Volcanus. It will reduce the footprint and load on the pumps and ore patches, but meh, maybe in another life. The scale of things is huge. Just walking across my blueprints takes a while. This is at least 10 times bigger than anything that I've built ever. Building it with only robots seems kinda idiotic, so I will build the majority of stuff with spider drones, then for the little things that I've missed, the robots will place them. Just to get a sense of how big they are, let's build yellow science together. We start at the science assemblers and it's not too bad. LDS is actually pretty small, you might miss it if you don't pay attention. Then comes blue circuits that are taller than any mountains in the Netherlands, which are none. Then comes batteries, which are twice as much as they should have. Flying robot machines, electric engines, and finally, we end off with engines. Now that I've finished placing down the majority of the stuff, I can start placing down the roboports and let them finish the work. I'm gonna need 140,000 more belts. Oof. And yeah, there you go. It works. It's a beauty. Finally, I need to run along the bus pipe and remove any pipe length limit reached. It is just putting pumps in between pipes really. I am not sure how many pumps I need for each place. This includes the pumps in the pipe bus and the pumps that pump from the bus to the science. But once I turn it on, I will be able to hopefully figure it out. Now that I'm done building, my brain thinks of something. I need technology, most notably research productivity. Even though I don't really care about SPM, higher research productivity will lead me to researching mining productivity easier, meaning I will have more ore in my ore patches. So I am upgrading the science setup of Volcanus. I should have done this like 150 hours ago, literally, but oh well. Back to the lab. I need to design two things. The first is a way to transport the science from the cargo landing pad to the labs. The general design is something like this. Cargo landing pad in the middle, the storage goes outward, roboports alongside them all, and the tracks on the side too. Why are we using robots instead of inserters? Because we can only extract things from the cargo landing pad, which will be about 15 inserters, which is nowhere near enough for what we need. Bots, however, have infinite throughput. Why am I transporting the science to the labs with trains instead of having the cargo landing pad next to the labs? For more flexibility, I guess? I might just put the cargo landing pad right next to the lab area, but that's for later. There are 6 sciences that are dropping from orbit. I decided that trains will be 20 wagon long, since that's similar to the other trains. But is that enough? So each train has 20 wagons, each wagon has 5 inserters, and each inserter can insert 60 items per second. That is 6000 PPS, which is pretty good actually. This is what it looks now. Can store up to 4 trains for each station. For how many locomotives I need, 4 seems to be the best. I might even use legendary fuel to make them even faster. I am testing it right now and I'm not too happy about it. I will keep this design, but I will probably have to switch over to a design that focuses on keeping the bot distance as small as possible rather than convenience. I am at 20 UPS in this world. Imagine my UPS with the middle base. Now the second thing I need to design, which is the lab area. First I need to test how many biolabs I need to consume half a build of science. 32 labs for 60 second technologies. For research productivity, which takes 120 seconds, you will need 64. This is about how big the lab area is if you put it in a square. One thing I neglected was that agricultural science doesn't give out 100% of its value. Rather, it's on average closer to 80%, so a more accurate lab area will be one with 26 labs. However, this only applies to some technologies, and the two most important technologies aren't one of them. They are robot working speed and mining productivity, by the way. I will explain that later. So how many patches does this consume? 32 times 0.5 times 240 equals 3840 patches per second. That's for technologies with 60 seconds. For research productivity, it's 120 seconds, so the PPPS is halved, 1920. Accounting for the 20% loss for agricultural science, 1536. This is about 90,000 ppm, although 32 labs don't exactly consume half a belt, they actually slightly under-consume that. It is actually closer to 3800 patches per second. I am just now finding out about it as I'm recording the voiceover, so forgive me for lying about the PPS, as I'm not going back and fixing it. So I can expect 1.5 million science. And no, research productivity doesn't give you infinite science. Yes, technically, theoretically, it can give you infinite research, but once you reach a certain point, you will die before you can go up the next level. Anyways, let's get to coding. Woohoo! Here is my problem. I have a finite amount of ore to make the science of. I make science out of those ore. I want to maximize the amount of science / amount of ore. There are two things that affect those: mining and research productivity. I will ignore the other productivity technologies. I want to know the optimal order of which I should research to maximize my gain. Practically speaking, this is useless, as I should just get the highest research productivity level before it takes forever to research, then switch over to mine productivity, mine out the patch, move to another patch, and the new patch won't run out in forever. But let's have fun. My idea is to build the system of Factorio into code, then develop some sort of system that generates research order and gets the final result. Finally, let it try out millions of different orders of research and get the best order. So let's get started. The first thing I get to work on are the constants and the starting values. These are things like how big the ore patch is, the research terrain, mining, and the research level. Next is converting raw ores into real ore. What I mean by that is that I apply the research terrain and the mining productivity to the ore patch, which gives us the real amount of ore we have. Mining and research productivity are simply 10 times of their level. The mining productivity should be divided by 100 here, as to convert it from a percentage to a decimal. I tried having things in different folders to make it more readable, but I somehow failed, so all the code is going to be in one page. Next, I define the upgrade cost for researching. For mining productivity, it's 1000 times the level. For research, it's 1000 times 1.2 to the power of the level. If I want to upgrade research productivity, I need to have enough science patches. If I have enough, I simply add 1 to the research level, subtract the purple science amount used from the total purple science, and move on. If I don't have enough, subtract 2.5 stone and add 1 science patch. A lot to unpack here. First, the ore patch, which I am limited by the most, is stone. For this, I choose purple science, as it is used in both technologies. Second, the ratio of making purple science with all the productivity is 1 purple science for 2.5 stones. Just like I can subtract from the ore pool, I can also subtract and add to the purple science pool. Third, the 2.5 stones I lose from making purple science is after all the bonuses, and so, for me to be able to subtract from the ore patch, I need to reverse the bonus. And lastly, I'll need to add the research bonus to the purple science before I look if I have enough. I do the same for mining productivity. Add if statement, so whenever the ore patch runs out, the loop breaks and it lets me know. Now that I can upgrade technologies individually, I'll need to decide which one I should upgrade. For this, I want to implement another function, one that can calculate how much the research will benefit me. I accidentally deleted all the code, so I have to write it again. For now, I'll go off track and develop a function that gives me how much upgraded mining productivity gives me. This is just the total ore plus 10% productivity minus the total ore. For research productivity, it's a lot harder to get the benefit of it, as you benefit from researching more, not getting more ore directly. Although, this could have been avoided if I opted to choose to maximize the amount of science I could make. But this requires a lot more work, so whatever. This doesn't even answer our question anyways. I have a while loop set up that only breaks once upgrading mining isn't worth it anymore. This is just to check if everything is working as intended. As you can see from the terminal, the science is going to the negative, and as we all know, science packs can't have a negative amount. I low-key forgot what happened here. When I checked whether I have enough to research, I compared the upgrade cost to the science packs currently available with the bonuses applied. But when I upgraded and needed to subtract the amount used, I subtracted the upgrade cost. So I had to actually reverse the bonus on the upgrade cost and subtract that. I rewrote it a bit to make it cleaner and work properly. I can finally now test to see what level I can reach with the limited amount of ore. Surprisingly, the starting mining level has a lot of influence on the end level. I tested with level 100, 300 and 500. 100 got 760, 300 got 1200 and 500 got 1500. The difference is even clearer with the research level. Right now I have research level 15, but level 15 is really easy to reach. How much would level 50 give me? Take a guess. But before that, I noticed that the remaining science after each iteration are around minus 71. This is kinda weird. It's because I increased the mining level, then subtract the science. This makes it so that the upgrade cost is calculated for the next level, not the current one. This is slightly more expensive, resulting in a negative amount. As to why it's minus 71 particularly, I am not so sure. Well, I have reached 1500. This is with level 7 research. This 300 increase of level is because of the previous mistake. I didn't think it would make such a huge difference. With level 50, I reached level 2700. I can't believe I wasn't planning to get in Prometheum Science. I have verified that the system is more or less accurate and reliable. I'm getting closer to what I want. How do I tell it what to upgrade? I want to be able to input the exact order I want it to research. Since I only have two options, researching mining or research productivity, assigning 0 to mining and 1 to research makes a lot of sense. So here I have a loop that reads the list. If the ore patch is low, it breaks. If there is something that isn't 1 or 0, it skips it. If it's 0, it's mining productivity, and if it's 1, it's research productivity. This works, but it's a bit tedious. If I want to research 300 levels of mining, I need to input 300 zeros. It's not the most convenient setup. Imagine instead of typing 300 zeros, you just type in 300. Well, that's what I'm making. Since there are only two options I can be doing, I can make the place of which the number sits at in the list rule whatever it is mining or researching. The number itself dictates how many times it has to research or mine. The first place will be mining, second research, third mining, fourth research, etc. Mining is odd, research is even. With the help of the modulo function, I can decide whether a number is even or odd. Because of some kind of mental illness in my head, I insisted on having the E be 1 or 2, and so the modulo is a bit weird. I then toyed around a bit with it and ultimately didn't find anything worthwhile. Get as high of a research productivity bonus before it's too expensive, then go all out on mining productivity. This made me realize how dumb it was for me to not get research productivity and a high mining productivity in the last base before I demolished it, but oh well. Originally, I wanted to end it off here, but I felt like a fraud, so I went back in and tried to do the last step, which is to try a bunch of orders and pick out the best. The first part is making the list that gives me the order. Having some sort of system that learns is too much for me, so what I'll do is randomly generate it. I will basically generate random integers. The range of those integers are of course different. The mining one has a way bigger range than the research one. Eventually, I settled down to 100 range for mining and 2 for research. How long the list is determines how accurate it is, but also the longer the list, the more time it takes to compute. 20 seems to be reasonably long to evaluate and give a score to each of the results. It's the mining level plus the research level times 20. I couldn't think of something better. It doesn't really have any basis or something, it just seemed reasonable and logical. So I went with it. Lastly, generate the list. Run it, evaluate it, compare it to the best, and if it's better, then replace it. Repeat as many times as you like. I tried doing it 100 times, which took hours. This is the result eventually. The 5000 at the end I manually put in. The reason for that, you only start benefiting from research productivity once you research a lot. Whilst we are in our tech era, let's talk about something else. Does science, the SPM, mean nothing? Since you can get an infinite amount of research productivity, the SPM is infinite. You can turn one bottle into an infinite amount of science. At least, that's what some people believe. That is theoretically not wrong. However, practically speaking, that's just wrong. The value of research productivity drops so quickly. I will show it to you. Here I have the formula 0.1 divided by 1 plus 0.1h plotted. It originates from this, which is basically the next level divided by the current level. So for example, level 56 is divided by 55. This shows how much 56 is bigger compared to 55. Since the next level is always bigger than the current, it's always 1 dot something. To visualize it better, we will subtract 1 from it. This will then only give us the true factor of how much bigger it is. The numbers are really small, so I have to adjust the x and y axis accordingly. X is the level, y is the value. The higher the level becomes, the less value it gives. At level 0, which is going from 0 to 10% productivity, the value is 10%. At level 10, this value is halved. At level 90, the value is 10 times smaller. So going from level 0 to 1 is a 10% total increase, whilst going from 90 to 91 is only a 1% increase. Key takeaway, the value decreases per level. This was about the value of the technology. Let's move on to the cost of the technology. The formula for calculating the cost of the technology is 1000 times 1.4 to the power of x, x being the level. Let's plot this, shall we? On the bottom there are the levels again, from 0 to 200. Don't even look at the y-axis, instead look at this number. I am going to add zeros and I want you to watch how the line moves. For each zero I add, the line moves by about 10 levels. Basically, each 10 levels, the cost of the technology rises by 10 times. This exponential rise of cost isn't going to be covered by the declining value it gives. Just to give you an example, if it took you 5 minutes to research level 30, then it's going to take you 8,000 hours to research level 80. After 8,000 hours of researching, you will only improve your SPM by about 1%. In conclusion, the value of research productivity technology declines slowly as the cost of it increases exponentially. As much as it inflates your science, it is not a cheat code. Similar bases will reach similar levels and will quickly favor researching other technologies such as mining productivity and robot speed. SPM is still a valid metric for many bases, maybe even more so than PPM, as PPM doesn't account for quality science. Although I have no knowledge of how good quality is for SPM, but I imagine they are better UPS wise and thus better for many bases. Back to Factorio. I am making blueprints for the trains, assigning names, schedules and color. Did you forget we were working on the labs? I did. I want the novice sciences to be coming from the top, whilst the planetary sciences from the left. To increase the throughput here, I'm going to have 2 inputs instead of 1. 3 stations for each one. Even though the network has 2 lanes, the output converges to a single lane here, which is bad. Eventually, I have something like this. As I was ready to launch the Prometheum ship and was sending spider eggs to it, I realized that I'm not launching the eggs quickly enough and they were slowly spoiling as I was still placing more egg farms. I tried saving it by dropping the eggs off quickly, but either the ship or the cargo landing pad got destroyed. I really can't lose either, as they both contain lots of legendary items that I need to wait hours to produce, so I loaded up a save way before I launched any eggs. I did learn from this that I need to shoot the materials from Prometheum ships in 1 or 2 launches. Any slowdowns would result in potential egg spoilage. So here I am in the lab designing a better chip blueprint. Rockets on the left, production in the middle, and the inputs to the ingredients are all on the right side. This is to minimize the distance of which bots have to travel. It could have been better if the input of the rockets were closer somehow. I currently have 2.2 thousand cargo bays. After some math, that works out to be 22 million science that can be stored. There is actually a hard limit on the amount of storage you can have. From my testing, it was 65,000 slots with 1300 bays, so it can only store up to 30 million science. There is still some merit to having more than that, I guess. You can unload quicker and more. Not sure if that will ever matter though. I have pretty much built everything for Aquilo. I just need to supply it now. I built the mining outputs as usual. I wanted to do something different this time and made all the train conditions time-based. Since there are only a handful of trains, I can afford to make them run constantly. The condition is simply 30-second pickup, 30-second drop-off. It gives life to the base, which I like. Time to get some primitive science. I have built enough eggs and quantum chips that I can just fill the ships in 2 shipments. I loaded up the eggs and then I realized I still had to go to FACTORIO and load up the chips. The loading takes a while, which is bad. We want the eggs to reach the shattered planet as fast as possible. So I go back in time, first load the quantum chips, then load the eggs. We are doing it. Yes guys, be proud of me that I built this amazing ship that I didn't design. According to the creator, it produces 384,000 science in a 50-minute trip. Probably closer to 40, but oh well. So that's 128 ppm. To match my more or less 1563 ppm my lab sprayer can suffice, it will need 12 ships. That is insane. My UPS is already down to 27 from 1 ship alone. I'm not even producing all the other sciences at full. Yeah, I'm looking at it, but still, Prometheum ships take an insane amount of UPS. It's mostly the reason why it's not smart to build a mega base with research technology as the goal. This is actually so big. I wanted to see how much initial levels of productivity matters. So I tested with mining 300 and research 7, with mining 400 and research 30. Apparently that resulted in an 800 level of difference. Honestly, it's such a huge increase that I'm doubting my accuracy of my code. The last planet to take care of is Volgora. Yes, Gleba only has 1000 ppm, but you only need so many levels of Gleba technologies until you don't need it anymore. I will build another blueprint to get 2000 ppm for the research technology. I have built the science, but I need to supply it. Even though I'm thinking about shipping materials from Vulcanus, I still want the majority to come from scrap and only ship in supplemental stuff. I think I will stick with my original design. Even though I don't like the use of robots, it's the best I can do really. What I want to do first is optimize the design a bit more. Less useless inserters, less space used. Eventually, I have something looking like this, which is way nicer than what I've had before. Stack 5 of them next to each other and add a loading station. And it's done. I have actually reached quite a high level of research productivity already, almost 40. I should have done this like 200 hours ago. For now, I will FK for a lot. Even though the science blocks are connected, the bots aren't flying all over the place, only the closest ones. That's actually so convenient. I will FK for like 70 hours now. I need to research lots of technologies and make lots of legendary machines. The Volgora scrapping process produces too much iron and copper and too little batteries and green circuits, so it's only logical to produce the underproduced items with the overproduced materials. To waste less scrap, I put a circuit that only lets the items flow through if there's an item in demand. Since I'm rotating through the items and the demanded item is only demanded in a small time frame, the demanded item only lets scrap through for a small period of time. Imagine all items are satisfied except for one. Because there's only one, the belts won't be continuously running and thus the overall production is heavily reduced. Since the lowest producing item bottlenecks the end product, it causes a massive bottleneck. First, I'm gonna simplify the circuit with a new combinator. It does the randomizing immediately and cycles much faster. Great. I have 5 of them as they can only pick one item at a time, and the inserter filter can accept 5 items. Occasionally the combinators pick out the same item, so I'll divide each signal by itself so that I only have singular signals. As to how I'll make it stop, I will only stop when there are no items that are under 10,000. Rocket fuel is an exception to that, so I will filter it out. I have 10 primitive ships so far and need only 2 more. I will also need to jumpstart them. First thing I need to do is request fuel and cold floor ketone, legendary solar panels too. Now I do have to wait until all the requests are filled. Back on Gleba, I want to build the second Gleba science block. First, I want to fix and optimize it. I do that by adding more rocket silos, storage chests that store the seeds nearby, and designing a pentabot egg design that actually outputs the desired output. The current design flaw is that at the end of the row, I split the belt to feed it back in as input. This makes it so that the output is always less than a full belt. My first try is to use one belt as input and output. This way, as we go along the belt, whatever is taken out of the belt is replenished. This, however, did not work. It works well in the first half of the row, but once you get to the second half, where the belt has items on both sides, it doesn't work quite well. This comes from the fact that items are taken out of the closed side, which the inserters can't replenish. To actually quantify if this is better or worse, I get my handy item counter. This design is about 1000 per minute faster. It is still about 40 per second too short of what I need. A different approach I thought about is having dedicated buy chambers that produce the edge solely as input. This comes to around 3.5 buy chambers. This is a bit odd as I have to somehow manage to split the buy chambers output in half. Took me longer than it should have as I'm restraining myself with the space. Eventually I figured it out and reached 13,500 per minute, which is way more than what I need. It's a lot harder when dealing with spoilage. 4 inserters for input alone, feeding the output back into the input, making sure it doesn't run out and all that sort of stuff. Thankfully, the input itself is fuel, so I didn't have to have an additional inserter with either a requester chest or a belt. I cleaned up the edge and bioflux destroying setup. I am producing one too many bolts of bioflux for the mid-trains. I also made it so I only set agricultural science to the silos whenever there's a request from orbital. Once I start exporting the science constantly, I will need a good supply of them. I will use the molten lava recipe with calcite. I pasted a few more rocket silos and I'm gonna solidify the process of which I made all the S and blue circuits. To kickstart the Prometheum ships, remove all laser turrets, place down solar panels, place down an assembler to empty floor carton barrels. Once you are done, undo everything and there you go. You still have to wait quite a bit for all the fuel and ammo to be made. I did some offline mining and the second Gleba science block is online. It was surprisingly easy to set it up this time. Since I'm moving the landing pad all the way down there, the Biden nests are too far from it, so I will have to destroy them and build new ones. Before I move it, I will quickly increase the density and thus amount of silos for Aquilo science. It's going to take forever, but what do I have if not time to waste? There we go. I just have to assign its address again. Destroying the biters. This is so cool. It is just lovely that I don't have to separate the networks. Now, how many of these biter eggs blueprints do I need and should I opt for legendary nest? I realized that overbuilding the egg production facility is really bad. If you overproduce on the eggs, those eggs will either be sent up later to the ship and hatch out early and thus destroy the ship, or you have to get rid of them via bots, which is really UPS intensive. I want to see how much eggs I can consume on average per second. Each ship needs 128,000. There are 12 ships and they need those 128,000 eggs each 40 minutes. So that's about 640 eggs per second. This is the minimum amount of production I need. One rocket silo can only send up to 16.6 eggs per second. The combination of legendary and common biterness to achieve this number is 5 legendary and 5 common, which is nice. Note this is actually wrong, as I took the biterness speed rather than the egg production speed, which is half of it. 640 divided by 16 is 40, so that's 10 of these blueprints. Going back, with full biter nest, the rocket silo can send 2 launches one after the another. So that's 1000. 128,000 divided by 1000 is 128. That's how many silos I will build. Before pacing down the trains, I need to make the pickup stations 2 more wagons long to account to me adding 2 more locomotives to each of the trains. I didn't build any legendary biter nests for now. Honestly, I'm kinda confused myself as to why I didn't. I calculated for how many trains I need for each of the sciences and I got to pasting them down. It's honestly such a relief that I have something that finally works. I was stressing so much about if I failed every design I made and that I'll be a no-show after all the build-up, that I'll be stuck in a cycle of designing, destroying the old base, building the new base, testing, failing, and repeating. I'm finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. This whole thing took so long that whenever I want to say something, I can't tell if I already said that thing or not. I feel like I'm saying the same stuff over and over, but then I look at my script and there's nothing there. That itself is making me paranoid about the video not turning out well because I can't keep track of everything mentally. And if this video doesn't turn out well, then, well, What was the whole point of all of this? I've legit spent more than 500 hours on this project. Basically, I'm doing crazy and I want this series to end so that I can finally move on and do something else. I will never want to return to this. At the very least, seeing all the builds filled up and the signs being made is nice. It's a shame you can't zoom out more than this. I know you can zoom out further with the editor mode on, but it doesn't feel right turning it on constantly. With it being close to the end, I want to discuss something. Here we have the list of the infinite technologies. Let's go over them. Useless. Really important. Useless after a certain level. 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 Useless. 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 Useless after a certain level. Useless after a certain level. Useless. Useless. Useless after a certain level. 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 Useless. Really important. Useless after a certain level. Useless after a certain level. Really important, but also its value dramatically falls off. So with this, your middle base should be built around those three technologies: mining productivity, robot speed, and research productivity. Because research productivity takes twice as long to research as others, you will need to build half the ppm compared to the rest. Let's make a list of the sciences and assign how much ppm we need for each of them relatively. For red, green, blue, purple, yellow, space, and pink science, you will need 1. For all the other sciences, you will need 0.5. For agricultural science, it's going to be closer to 0.6 as they spoil. The SPM follows the same. So when I say my base is 3840 pps and 4 million SPM, I actually mean this. This is my subjective take. There isn't a consensus yet on what qualifies to be a middle base, but I think a lot of people would agree with this. My actual base is closer to this. Well, at the end at least. Even though I don't believe in having 3840 pps for lava and aquilo science, it just felt right to do. So what's stopping me from getting 3840 pps for all my sciences is pasting down 12 more Prometheum ships, pasting down 2 to 3 more agricultural science blueprints, slightly improving military science, doubling the amount of labs, and improving the logistics of course. But simply because of UPS limitations, I can't do that. Anyways, I'm going to activate all the Prometheum ships and send them over to the shattered planet to build up a buffer before actually sending them to Jet Science. Completely useless, but oh well. But now that we are on the topic of Prometheum ships, let me explain them. I'm not gonna explain the resource management and whatever, but more so on the system itself. The first system is the token system, which only allows ships to go to navies if they have an epic barrel. You don't want to have a bunch of ships hanging over navies, as that could lead to the X being launched to multiple ships and eventually spoiling. The amount of epic barrels determines how many ships are allowed to go to navies. From my testing, 1 barrel was enough for 6 ships. Since I have 12 ships, I had to introduce a second epic barrel, so 2 ships could go to navies. Next is rare barrel. I didn't know this until much later, but in the trick starting phase, you are supposed to send a singular rare barrel to each ship. When the barrel is present in the hub, the ship doesn't request a rare barrel anymore. Remember that eggs are only loaded and launched if there's a rare barrel request from orbit. This barrel is taken out if the ship is on navies and there's no more Prometheum science in the ship. This is really useful, so you don't make Prometheum science when the cargo landing pad is full, and so the hub doesn't overflow with the science and by the eggs present at the same time. Lastly, if you haven't consumed Prometheum science in a long time, make sure to send your ships that are hanging on Aquilo to the shattered planet to buffer up on asteroids. Otherwise, they will slowly run out of asteroids and die. Asteroid productivity helps a lot with your spaceships, so make sure to have a high level of it. Ever since I've gotten legendary bots, I've forgotten how bad bots are on Aquilo. Currently, inputs of the quantum chips are too far. Not even 30,000 bots are enough for it. Not even Navis uses that much bots. So I'm moving it closer to the cargo landing pad. Well, I am also moving it closer. Put a couple of rubber parts around it and it looks good. This is not sustainable at all. What was I thinking? One weird thing is that there was molten iron in the molten copper pipe and the other way also. I don't think it was caused by our own pipe or something, because after I deleted the molten stuff, everything worked correctly. 60,000. This is a disaster. Back to designing. I preferably want to change things rather than rebuild it as a whole, so I'm working off the existing lab area. Here's the problem. I have 6 different sciences that come from 6 different trains with different water length that need to both balance sides with another science and go in 32 different belts. Let's say we want to balance red and green science. Red science train has 15 wavelengths, whilst green has 20 wavelengths. How could you extract enough science to satisfy the labs, extract and distribute in a balanced way such that all wires empty at the same time, somehow balancing 15 wires with 20 wires to get a total of 32 belts? Not to mention the problem of routing that many belts and balancing them all. Not to mention, you have to do it 2 more times. I am thinking of putting everything into a 128 lane balancer and calling it a day. Then suddenly, I had a light bulb appear above my head. I can run all the belts alongside the labs and extract the science with inserters. Yes, this does cost thousands of underground belts and like 20,000 inserters, which is UPS intensive. But trust me, this is the best solution. It is sadly a bit too wide for my setup. My options were either rebuild the lab setup or find another way to save on space. Yeah, I'm not so sure what I was thinking here. It probably even deadlocks. I can actually save quite a bit of inserters. I only need inserters where the science is, so that's the majority of them gone. So now I have this, but this is with the labs with an extra beacon in between one and another. Since there isn't an entire clone of red science inserters, other inserters could take its place, and that way I managed to make it small enough to stack on the labs. This isn't perfect. It isn't the most UPS friendly solution. You also need to make sure to have at least 2 extra belts running alongside than you actually need or consume. The inserters above have priority on the inserters below as they fill up the belt, and thus the bottom inserters can't work as the belt is full. This makes it so that the belts empty out from the top to the bottom as you go along. This becomes an issue at the end, where there are less than 3 full belts where science is available. At the very end, there will be only one belt that is fully stacked and full. This belt can fill up to 2 half belts, but because the way the inserters are laid out, only one inserter has access to it. Meanwhile, you need 3 inserters for half a belt, so even though there are enough science in the belts, the access is limited. This can be solved by various ways, but the simplest is to have more rows than what you need. 3 inserters? I thought you need 2 inserters for half a belt. Well, that is usually the case, but not when you are grabbing things off from a belt. For that, you will need 3. For the train stations, I have this. Each wagon is 1 belt. They all feed in balancers so that each of the wagons are consumed equally and routed. Not perfect, but good enough. I have 2 stations for red science, as the red science train only has 15 wagons, aka 15 belts, and I need at least 16 belts. I gave each one of them a train limit of 4, which should be enough. At the end, it came out to like 5,000 inserters. This is far more than what you need, as you only need like 3 inserters for each column, but I have like 10 or 20. Ideally, you would have 3 inserters for each column, stacked 4 of them in a row and then move on to the next row. That will be probably 1 to 2,000 inserters, much better UPS wise. Time to build it all. It is always better to reject fancy designs and resort back to the basics. I won't have the perfect amount of inserters, but I'm gonna reduce them with the least effort possible. I will remove the bottom half of the inserters on the left side and remove the top side on the right side, as they'll be 100% inactive at all times. It may look bad now that there are gaps in the belts from the time train leaves and another one comes, but trust me, this is just a problem at the start. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But please, I beg, buff the wagons. They are instantly emptied. There's no way trains have gotten reduced to just science and cluster transporters. Even at that, they are struggling a bit. Notice that there are some belts that couldn't be balanced with the rest. These belts are on the top side so that they get priority and run out first. Finally launching up the rare barrels. I am going to send thousands of rockets into space, so it is finally time to have a strong LDS and blue circlet build. This is where it all went wrong. Why did I double it? I quickly built a setup that produces enough rocket fuel and lithium to support the whole base. Honestly, a big reason why this is all taking so long is that I'm only upgrading things as I need to, when in reality, I should scrap the whole base and start fresh and big. But I like the idea that I built my mega base off my original base 400 hours ago. I bolted the barrel and gave it its own rocket on Aquilo to make sure that the barrel is sent up as soon as possible. Make sure you don't insert more than one barrel into the rocket silo. Because I doubled the egg production, I'm having to invest so much into destroying the leftovers. It is such a pain to deal with. The biter eggs are a real problem. I'm already lagging so much from the bots for the science. Now I have to deal with this. Now that I think about it, there's a tech where you can fill things up in a chest, automatically shoot a railgun at them and destroy them. That would have been handy here, but wouldn't address the core issue. Why did I double them? Every time a ship recruits an eggs, I need to deal with 128,000 eggs. Like, this is so dumb of me. I did all the math, I did the logic, I thought of it, I tested it a bit, I had the feeling for it, and then for some reason I just doubled it. Like, why? That's it, I'm blowing it up. $80,000 bots. Apparently I don't have enough roboports. I'm going to have to optimize the lab area to the max. I am not planning on expanding any more than this, so I can optimize in any way I see fit. No more designing for expansion or convenience, pure performance. First thing I do is move the requester chest more closely together. Second is remove the bottom half of the labs and flip it to the other side. This way, bots don't have to travel extremely far. Alternate the novice size of the two sides with belts. Lots of them. Technically, I can use splitters to merge two belts, travel the distance, then split again. But I'm not doing all of that. I did some math about how many roboports can handle how many bots. Didn't get an exact answer, but basically, the reason I saw 80,000 bots working is not because 80,000 bots are required, but because all the other bots are out of batteries and aren't working. Some more roboports are needed. I forgot to record building it, but here I am testing it. I have a realistic robot speed level, 26. With 50,000 robots, I'm pretty much filling up all the vaults. Keep in mind, this type of demand is unrealistic. This is double the usual demand really, so I think it's a success. The key to success is keeping the requester chest as close to the cargo pad as possible and move the roboports outwards between the requester chest and the labs, not in between the requester chest and the cargo pad. Isn't this pretty? YouTube bitrate isn't going to like this one bit. Aha, get it? 1 bit bitrate. Now that's done, the eggs again. This time I won't go overboard. I will go for half legendary and half common biter nest. I am going to replace some of my ships with others made by a stupid fat hobbit. The speed of them is comparable, but it is way more convenient, nice and reliable. With everything built and 10 premium ships sent away, we are there. Using the same side of the belt for agricultural science and spoilage is kinda dumb, so I'm going to dump the spoilage on a separate belt instead. Something weird that I only notice now is that if a machine produces a lot of liquid, at some point it needs more than one pipe connection to be able to dump off its content accordingly. So all of these foundries are working at half the speed, which is not good. But I only needed to work at half speed, so let's move on. Aquilo isn't doing too well for power. I massively underestimated the amount of power needed for it. The rockets alone are draining 10 gigawatts, not to mention I have like 400 cryogenic plants that I haven't even started working fully. The drain of the rocklets isn't continuous, thankfully, so I can cover their demand with accumulators. For the rest, I will upgrade fusion. If you look at the production graph, clearly something is going wrong on Volgara. I am simply not producing enough materials. I would have loved to get a straight answer on how many belts of scrap I need to process for the amount of science, but it wasn't so easy with the calculator. Instead, I looked at how much Holmes solution, and thus ore, I will need, and from there calculate how many belts I need. Apparently, I need 110 belts, so 110 stacked belts of scrap running continuously, so that is 26,400 scrap per second. It might be a bit overkill, but it's better to do over than under. If you purely process the scrap to make science, then the bottleneck is actually batteries, but if you make batteries from the leftover iron and copper plate, then the bottleneck is holmium. Anyways, time to yet again find another way to recycle scrap. Bots are bad, so I will avoid them at all costs. 4 recyclers can eat up a belt and spit out 2 stacked belts. Although the scrap recyclers don't always stack items, if they are fast enough, then they will. In the last design, I was using 5 belts of scrap to feed 10 wider long trains. I will do the same here. Works nicely as 1 belt of scrap is turned into 2, so I have 1 belt for each wagon. The basic premise of this design is to have 1 long belt running across, where inserters can pick up items to insert into trains and ship them out, or insert into other recyclers to either break them down or destroy them. Stone, holmium, batteries, and ice can be immediately picked up into trains. Next, I will destroy both fuel cubes and steel. These are utterly useless, so I will completely remove them by using splitters. Next is iron gears. I tried using belts instead of inserters to save up on OPS, but inserters are better as they stack. For the LDS, the steel is routed back to the steel destroyer, and the plastic and copper is put back into the belt. I have 1 inserter to drop off the plastic and copper, but this is bad because it eventually deadlocks. Either have 2 inserters for each item or have it work via a clock. I can pick up the plastic and continue on with breaking down the circuits. I realized later it would have been better to collect the plastic after breaking down the circuits. But oh well, there are a bunch of things that I had to change later on this design, like improving the destruction of all section at the end, collecting more ice cubes for the sulfuric acid, and adding rails so that trains could go around the section instead of waiting inside the blueprint and deadlocking it. After that, I can start making circuits and batteries with the leftovers. Something like this. I went back and I realized that I also needed to void concrete. It is much better to craft it into hazard concrete than recycle that, as avoiding recycling the concrete directly makes it so you don't have to deal with bricks. Now I get to pasting them down. Now that I am reforming Volgara, I might as well change the science design. I'm using too many bots for no reason here. We need more belts. The build is simple, won't talk much about it. It's basically the same as the old one with the same ratios, but everything is with belts. The one interesting challenge is converting 10 wedges into weird amounts of belts, like 1, 3, 4, etc. All of this takes so much foundation that I'm forced to run around and collect any unused ones. Currently, the scrap miners and recyclers will run forever even when that is not needed. I don't know how to automatically manage it yet, so I'll add circles to each one of them to manually turn them on or off. The trains somehow didn't all place correctly, so I'm gonna destroy them all and manually deploy them. I know I don't have enough, but I just wanna know if it all works. So there are 20 chemical plants that each need 11.1 holmium per second. There are 4 of these setups, times 60 to get a minute, that's 53,000 per minute. Right now I'm at 23,000, so I need to more than double it. Back to managing the miners. I figured I could use something similar to the token system. If there is a speaker in the logistic system, turn miners on. If not, turn it off. Eventually, I can automate it by hooking it up to a rocket silo and read if there's a request for pink science, then turn on the miners. I thought about inputting the scrap into a rocket silo so I can extract a lot more belts from the same ore patch, but I decided against it. it is much harder to cover the whole ore patch and you will consume it a lot faster. I also only used patches with more than 20 million scrap. I know I don't have enough scrap processing, but I want to see if this is enough to at least research productivity. I'm kinda sick of placing all these scrap processors. The answer is yes. The production graph of all the science is hilarious. It's all over the place, I love it. Actually, the lava science is underperforming, so let's see what's going wrong. The three issues with it is that tungsten is only built at 120 instead of 240, I am not making enough molten copper, and the first blueprint isn't working all the time due to train timings. Well, I will get to the making part later, but first, they need to be able to actually consume them. It turns out you need to connect pipes to both the inputs for it to run constantly, no idea why. Same goes for making molten copper, using both pipes inputs and outputs. Convert the stone into landfill and dump it in lava. I decided to add 2 more foundries, just in case. As I am editing, I realized that I've forgotten to fix the tungsten ore belt outputting 120 instead of 240, so here I am 50 hours later fixing it. There is a random tear in the fabric of space here. Maybe the devs are hinting at wormholes. I have around 21 mining setups, so 105 belts of scrap. It suffices for research productivity, but I want to see if it actually can work at full speed. The pink science production was going down drastically, then I remembered to turn on the miners. Purple science isn't doing so well. Without it, I can't properly stress test the pink science, so we will have to fix that first. It looks horrible. Look at these empty belts. I don't think I need to explain why this is bad. I balance the science and the furnaces. This isn't a cure, but merely a bandage. The core issue is that the miners are giving 120 ores per second instead of 240. So here's my idea. I will merge 2 belts to one, giving me half the required full belts. Then for the other half missing, I will supplement it with trains. Each train will have its own separate train network to make sure that the trains can travel fast enough and not deadlock. But after some messing around with it, I didn't like this idea too much. Yes, it can work, but it is a lot of work. Just for 10 belts, you'll need like 10 trains and 2 train stations at the drop-off. The amount of trains increases the bigger the distance is from the ore patch. I built 2 of them just to see. And yeah, this is not going to cut it. I will end up with hundreds of trains purely to transport stone. And if I do that for stone, I might as well do that for all the other ores. But if I'm gonna do that to all the ores, I might as well mine out the ore patches here, move to the edge of the vault and set up base there. So to get full stack belts from miners, I will mine the ores into a rotted silo, where I then use stack inserters to extract the ore at a much higher rate. This way I can get 5 belts, but I like to keep it down to 3. One thing to remember during all of this, the asset buffers slowly runs out as they hover above Aquilo, so make sure to send them to the Shutter planet to refill them. Now that I think of it, interrupts are perfect to automate this. I started the research productivity and I already saw that something was going wrong on Aquilo. It has 18,000 bots working for it. There is no reason Aquilo should be using, well, any bots really, when Navis only needs 10 to 20,000, and that is Navis, where I'm forced to use them. So here's what I did in Aquilo. I added a couple more cyclers to destroy the rocket fuel, built the lithium plate to avoid bots, trained and built the rocket parts and the lithium plate. Since I want to both have LDS and blue circuits on the same train, and I have it double-sided, I had to filter the wagon to make sure it works. I split it in half, but since blue circuits stack twice as much compared to LDS, it should have been 2/3 and 1/3, but oh well. Welp, I am at 1.8 million SPM, and everything seems to be working fine. It might look like lava science is underproducing, but because I'm transporting them via ships, which work as a buffer, the production works in cycles. So the production overshoots and undershoots if you look at a small time frame, like 10 minutes. As for the Prometheum science, I actually estimated the amount of ships pretty well, as I am producing just a bit more than what I needed. To reach my goal of 4 million SPM, I will need level 77 research productivity. That is easy enough. Just for fun, I wanted to know what level I needed for 5 million SPM. Turns out level 99, which will take me 500 hours to research. Keep in mind that I'm running Factorio 3 to 4 times slower, so about 1500 hours of real time, so 5 million is just a dream. 2 hours after AFK researching, Volgora trains deadlocked, so I fix it. Another 2 hours down the drain because I forgot to turn on the miners. Another thing that went wrong, Aquilo Science is low on supply, but also zero Primitive Science. All 12 ships are on Aquilo, even though 2 are normally supposed to be on Navis. The ship itself looks normal, but they all seem to be missing either the barrels or the chips. That's interesting. Let's look at Aquilo itself. I lost power. I added more fusion reactors and upgraded them to all legendary. Well, wouldn't you know it, something else went wrong. A primitive ship got destroyed. The acid buffers were getting too full. I have changed the amount allowed in them according to the circuit a couple of times, but that clearly doesn't help. So this time, I decided to add the content of the crusher to the circuit. Somehow this happened to the ice asteroids as well. Can't wait for the ship to break again because the oxide asteroids got filled up. I have scaled up the production of LDS and blue circuits on Volcanus, as it needs to supply its own rockets and the ones on Aquilo. I have AFK'd for a good 12 hours and look at that. The first 2 hours I was flushing down the Gleba Science constantly, so it wasn't so good. After that, a straight rising line. I have consumed 330 million stones. All of my ore patches combined don't equal 10% of that. I want you to remember this ore patch at the pink science. It is currently sitting at 4.7 million ores. Automated miner controller system. The production graph is crazy. Every science other than Gleba science is going up and down. The power demand of Navis is apparently only 40 GW, which isn't a lot honestly. I will eventually upgrade all the fusion reactors to legendary to save on UPS. That was a good bet, but I need other technologies before I AFK for days for research productivity alone. First, I'm going to get 400 levels of mining productivity. The things I want for now are level 20 rocket power productivity, level 23 robot speed, and level 23 for laser and rocket damage. After that, get 2 more research productivity levels and then go all out on mining productivity. I have AFK'd for a bit and I have reached level 4500 of mining productivity. If you look at the production graph, it has been around 40 hours, so 80 hours in real time. Here is research prod and here is mining prod. I did this to have enough resources to research everything I need to. So how much did this all cost me? Well, if you look at the ore patch, which at this point is my resource bottleneck, it only consumed 200,000 stone ores. So how long will this cost me? Well, because of the much higher mine productivity, and I'll probably get more in the future, I'm estimating it will be enough for like 10,000 hours, which is much more than I will ever spend in this world. The speed of it is funny, 7,000 per second. It is legit impossible to do anything with this kind of speed. If you look at the graph again, my science is hovering just above 3.85 million. In the last 50 hours, I've produced 3 billion stones, almost 4 billion wires and 3 billion steel, 1.7 green and 1.3 billion red circuits. 1 million per second of wires, stone and steel. I would love to see trains being able to transport more than 1 million ores per minute. The fluids aren't as crazy, except for molten iron. Copper is really low for now, but I think it will be much higher if I was producing yellow science. Still, molten iron dominates. Now, what is my issue? I am currently producing 221,000 packs. I am supposed to do 230, so 9,000 per minute of difference. The issue comes from purple science. Something is wrong. 1. The production drops really often. 2. Even at peak production, it is much lower than it should be. Purple science should be 29,000 above consumption. But before that, I want to optimize the inserters. Right now I have 2,000 inserters and I think I can get away with much less. It has also other issues, such as that the last build isn't being consumed, reducing the throughput. Even when the input at the balancer is saturated, the output isn't. The production is the source of my problems, but I still want to optimize this. so we placed 3 inserters in a row for full saturation. Top it over 6 times in a row to consume all 3 belts. This actually doesn't work here, as not all the belts are balanced. Only at 3 of the sciences could this work. Even at those 3 sciences, it doesn't actually work, because the inserters don't have equal priority. To see if there was a specific configuration of inserter stack sizes that will give no gaps in the belt. Too hard to test in the real world. The first 6 inserters have a stack size of 14 and the last 2 have a stack size of 16. This apparently hits the sweet spot and all the belts are saturated. I rebuilt the second station of red science to help with the throughput. I added infinite wagons to all the sciences to replicate the real setup. This isn't exact, but good enough for now. Now I place down the 8 inserters and suddenly there are gaps. Even the one that I copy pasted. Somehow I got lucky on the first one, as it only sometimes works accordingly. This is genuinely crazy to me. I pasted it down again and it works. Pasted a bunch and some work and some doesn't. If anyone knows how this works, please let me know. I have another configuration which is from left to right, top to bottom, 14, 14, 14, 12, 15, 15, 15, 15. I pasted down a couple and they all work, so this must be it. There are gaps, not because of the inserters, but because the belts themselves aren't fully saturated, because the balancers are missing one belt of input. I rebuilt it. This does provide full throughput, although not all wagons are balanced with each other, so this can be potentially bad. After some thinking, I just gave up. The system itself is too volatile, so it's not the smartest to pair it with something that needs precise inputs. I'm also near the end, so no point wasting time on this anymore. I am upgrading the fusion power plants to legendary, and what's that? Are those biters no less than 2 seconds away from a power plant? How convenient! I enclosed 2 of them in walls, and the other I trapped on an island alone. Sadly, they all despawned eventually. I am consuming 11,000 closets per minute. That's 180 per second, which is less than a full belt, so I'm gonna build it over instead of using bots. There seems to be a lot of gaps in the belts. 12 times 19.5 is 234. This isn't exactly a full belt, but there shouldn't be this many gaps. The proof of this is this assembler, which isn't working continuously because the inserter doesn't always have the space on the belt. To fix this, I can use 2 pieces of belts as buffer to fill any gaps. I am now producing 250, so yeah, it was that bad. There are gaps here also, so I applied the same idea. Look at that, no gaps. I went back to FK and I wanted to know if I actually need an autoclicker for this. The last research needs 17 hours, so no need for it. I FK'd a bit and I got 4 more levels. I redid my math and I actually think this is enough. The lab area consists of 32 labs in a square. Since each row or column only needs half a belt, I need 16 belts, so 3,840 packs per second. Science is per minute, so times 60, times 2 for the 50% pack drain. My research productivity is 710%, plus 100 from modules, so that works out to 8.1, but this is actually 9.1, as the base needs to be accounted for. So that's almost 4.2 million science per minute, so I actually have enough. Of course, the labs don't exactly consume half a belt, but it is close enough. In the last 10 hours, I've achieved a consistent amount of production and consumption for all the sciences. There are some bumps in the consumption line, but it is close enough. That's when I realized that I'm not actually consuming as much as I should be. After some searching, I had a whole row of labs not working due to a misplaced underground belt. With that, I'm only 1000 off my goal, which I'm happy with. Now that I've shown that I'm capable of researching research productivity, I can move on to others. Here I have a regular shooting speed level. This one needs red, green, military, blue, yellow, space, pink, and Aquilo Science. If I can show that I can research this for a decent amount, then it also proves that I'm producing enough of all of these sciences. The other one I need to test for is artillery technology, which will test my lava science. With both of this done, I will officially reach my goal. Disclaimer: both of these technologies use military science, so I actually have to change them for technologies for ones who don't have them, but that's for later. By the way, I am running at 15 UPS, so 4 times slower than it should be. It is so miserable playing like this. My production of power on FACTORIO is awfully close to this consumption. Hopefully they can keep up. FACTORIO science is running out rather quickly. It is mostly because there aren't enough ice cubes, because I'm not getting rid of the ammonia fast enough, because a single pipe input isn't enough. So just use 2 pipes. But I can't do that, because it only has 1 input for ammonia and 2 for water. Why does water have more when you need 10 times less for it? I don't get it, there's no reason for this. Every time I go to a world with 60 UPS, everything feels so smooth and fast. I can't wait to finish this and go back to a normal UPS. I totally didn't just watch a YouTube video and forgot to record, but here's the liquid voiding setup. Liquid simply vanishes. But first, FACTORIO has gone offline. It is kind of hard to actually kickstart it, but basically isolate it from literally everything and build a bunch of solar panels. I pasted 2 more of these down to make sure this doesn't happen again. I was considering building a bigger, more efficient power plant, but it's too late for that. Lithium was apparently a bit short, but simply rotating this bolt fixes it. Now to copy paste this 4 times and add just a bit more ice to the mix and build them better. The power was slowly declining, so the accumulators had to kick in. Turns out I'm not cooling down the forklift fast enough. Upgrading the cryogenic plants solves this issue. I know I didn't AFK for that long, but I think this is enough. If something was about to go wrong, it would have already done so. Now ping science is low. First thing I noticed is that the power isn't enough. In the meantime, I have been transitioning over to laser ships, with these older ships being destroyed. Power wasn't the only issue for ping science. I added a couple more scrap recyclers, 1 here and those 4. I think I'll add 2 more. This is actually enough. I am producing more than I consume. I actually did it. You guys wouldn't get how tedious it was to do all of this. To support those 4 science facilities, you need this many minor facilities. Let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I have almost 30 of these just for those 4, and plus whatever this generates, which isn't much. Almost 400,000 science bottles in 1 shipment. Beautiful. On the way, I encountered a faulty copper train whose conditions weren't good, so I had to painstakingly go through all the trains to check whether they had the right condition or the wrong one. Definitely the most annoying thing I have done. Ping science is just a bit off from what I need. There are gaps in the belt, so you know what that means. Much better. Remember how I said that military science is a bottleneck for this research? Well, yeah. Science is all over the place and purple is scarce. We have enough power, but it seems like everything just declines slowly. The problem is that I'm not producing enough molten iron and copper. So I designed a better molten iron and copper design. Added 1 more belt of calcite, more mining and more sulfuric acid. It has been like 6 hours and that's pretty much a straight line. It is only shaky near the end because it was running out of sulfuric acid, but I fixed that. So yellow and pink science are officially done. I hate how low my EPS is. These technologies should zoom by. When I started I was imagining completing the lower depths in seconds, which I am, but not in real life. I am getting ripped off from my enjoyment. Lastly, lava science. I really don't care about it. I basically added a coal mining outpost and changed the drain limit of the drop-off from 2 to 4. I eventually reached this point, 193. I really don't care about it any more than this, so I will lock this in as my final science number. Days later, I wasn't happy about not reaching 3840 PPS for lava science, so I quickly added another blueprint and it got that. Well, this is the end of my suffering. Insert breaking chain sound effect. I reached my goal for red, green, blue, purple, yellow, space, pink, lava, FACTORIO, and pre-medium science. Military is kind of close and agricultural science doesn't count. Seeing how the original goal was 1000 per second and I came all the way to like 3800 per second, I must say I am proud of myself, considering I've never built any base that is even remotely considered big, let alone a mega base. It turned out well. Was this fun? Meh. I would rather have spent my time playing a mod pack or another challenge rather than this. It just comes with a lot of not fun. Did you just spend 2 hours designing a blueprint? That is fun. Now spend another 2 hours building it. If you want to build, test, remove or do anything really, it takes hours. Not to mention, if you don't have a top tier PC, that you will have a low UPS. This is truly the worst. Low UPS makes it unbearable to play. It is truly the worst part of this. I have spent way too much time on this, more than 3 months in the making. By the time I finished making the video, I would have spent, dare I say, more than 700 hours on this whole thing. Overall, I am happy with my base. I know some may say that my base isn't valid because of various reasons, like I didn't run it long enough or not all the sciences are producing at the same rate. But I really don't care. I didn't do this to have a world record or beat other people's designs. I just wanted to make a whole bunch of science packs and to maybe inspire others to start their own world. To show that you don't need to be good at something or have experience in it before doing it. You just have to do it over and over again until you succeed. The same with my little math or programming sections. I know I'm not good at them, but that's the point. To show you that you don't need to be good at it to do it. I am now kinda out of ideas. Of course, there's still the option of playing more mod packs like C-Block or maybe even Pianodon or something more simple, but I'd rather play something shorter after doing this. So please, let me know if you want me to play something. A challenge run, a mod, a new game perhaps. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like so I don't have to work anymore.